let's briefly review our P wave, our normal P wave, and some AV blocks or atrioventricular blocks. P wave itself and the entire PR interval, they're pretty cool because they incorporate just about everything. So our P wave is atrial depolarization, but the entire PR interval is everything down this electrical conduction system all the way down to the Purkinje system right before ventricular depolarization. So if we color code it here, here's our P wave and our PR interval. We've got our SA node firing, depolarizes our atria, or AV node slows it down right in here in blue, hits a bundle of His, hits our bundle of branches, goes down to our Purkinje systems, and then bam, into ventricular depolarization. So our P wave and our PR interval can tell us a lot about the health of this conduction system. PR interval, if we break that apart, we've got the P wave and we have the PR segment. Our PR segment should be at baseline. If it's not, if it's below that, we're going to say that the PR segment is depressed. If it's above baseline, we're going to say that the PR segment is elevated. If it's depressed, we'll talk about this later on in the semester, but if the PR segment itself, that point in between the end of the P wave and the beginning of the QRS complex, if that segment is depressed, hallmark classic sign of pericarditis. If it's elevated, could be a wonky, either one of these, depressed or elevated, could be a wonky baseline. If it's elevated, if that PR segment is elevated, could be an infarction, just not in your ventricles, could be an atrial infarction. Pretty uncommon, but if you see PR elevation on its own, we might be thinking an atrial infarction, a heart attack, but it's happening in one of the atria. Split these apart: PR depression, so PR segment depression, not the interval, but the segment itself. So PR depression could be normal, could just be a wonky baseline. It just might be a little depressed. That's fine. Could be pericarditis. We'll talk about that later on in the semester and how to really differentiate pericarditis from anything else. Could be atrial infarction. So anything with that PR segment elevated, depressed, could have atrial infarction implications. Most of the time, PR segment wonkiness, elevation or depression is just a weird baseline. It's kind of going up, going down. It's kind of flowing up, flowing down. So not a super common sign for us to see. We're not really paying a whole lot of attention directly to our PR segment, but just a couple other causes for PR segment interestingness. Other signs of pericarditis. Again, we'll talk about this later on in the semester a little bit, but tachycardia, we've got that PR segment depression, not PR interval, but PR segment depression, and then diffuse ST segment elevation, like ST segment elevation everywhere, and we will get into ST segments and what makes ST segment elevation and what that means to us when we print out that 12 lead, and then, well, is this something I should be worried about? Is this a heart attack? Is this a STEMI, ST elevation MI, or is it something else? Maybe pericarditis. So, but with pericarditis, we are going to see PR segment changes, or we could see PR segment changes. Expanding now to our PR interval, a normal PR interval, so the beginning of the P wave to the beginning of the QRS complex should be 0.12 to 0.20 seconds wide, so one to the other. We all know you went out and bought those calipers. We know you went to Amazon.com and typed in EKG calipers and then hit buy, and they ship to you in 2 days, and you have them now. So when we're looking at our 12 leads, just looking at even a 3 lead, PR interval 0.12 seconds to 0.20 seconds. Anything shorter than that is going to be short. Anything longer than that is going to be long or prolonged. So when we talk about a short PR interval, anything less than that 0.12, lengthened, prolonged PR interval, anything greater, longer than 0.20 seconds. What if you have a short PR interval? That's weird. That's uncommon. That's abnormal, right? So it's shorter than 0.12 seconds. Three things we're going to be thinking about might be a junctional rhythm. These might be junctional P waves. So it just might be a junctional rhythm with a short PR interval, not a normal sinus rhythm or sinus rhythm. And then if it's not junctional, well, maybe we have one of a couple pre-excitation syndromes, either WPW or LGL. And later on this semester, we'll get into how we differentiate between those two and then differentiate between junctional and these pre-excitation syndromes. But if we've got a short PR interval, we're thinking something's going on, something weird's going on. So it's not just a sinus rhythm or normal sinus rhythm. Maybe it's junctional, or maybe it's one of these pre-excitation syndromes. Then on the opposite end of things, what if my PR interval is prolonged? What if it's greater than 0.20 seconds? What's going on? Well, we're going to start to look at the PR intervals and the P to P's ratios, and or the P to R ratios, and are these all the same? Do our PR intervals the same? Are our P waves the same? Are the P to R ratios the same? So if yeah, we've got a prolonged PR interval, but everything else is normal, probably a first degree heart block. No? Well, then we're getting into other types of AV blocks, maybe a wandering pacemaker, maybe multifocal atrial tachycardia. The difference between those two, remember, is just heart rate, but we need two different names for them for some reason, right? Maybe we've got PACs in there, but so if we have a prolonged PR interval, but the PR interval is consistent, constant, there's a P wave to every QRS. It's just a little long and everything looks the same. P waves look the same. We've got a first degree heart block. We can move on with our day. Pretty benign, and everything, everyone's good with everything. But if our PR intervals are varying between QRS complexes, so the PR interval is just different with each QRS complex, maybe it's not so consistent, maybe it's a little different. We're looking at the P waves. Are they all looking the same? So they're all coming from the same focus. We're wondering, are those PR intervals progressively lengthening? Are they getting a little longer, a little longer, a little longer with each successive QRS complex? And then maybe we drop a beat. So that tells us there's another AV block going on. Are there grouped beatings? Tells us maybe there's another AV block going on. And then maybe the P waves and the QRS complexes are completely dissociated. So we have AV dissociation, atrioventricular dissociation. Your atria and your ventricles are not talking to each other in the least bit. So we have a different AV block going on. So at this, this quick little rhythm here at the bottom, we've got our first P wave, our first PR interval. We got 0.14 seconds. That's cool. That's normal. Well, we move on to our second one. Well, that's longer. 0.24 seconds. And then I've got my third P wave, and I don't have a QRS complex here. And then we go back to our first, which would be 0.14 seconds long for the PR interval. So think about that. What rhythm do we have? We definitely have an AV block. Well, which one is it? Which AV block has PR intervals that lengthen, progressively lengthen, and then drop, and then start all over again? If you said a second degree type 1, well, then you got it. If you said a fifth degree, well, then you just made something up. But second degree, type 1, a Mobitz 1, Wenckebach, lots of names for it, but second degree type 1 AV block has these lengthening PR intervals and then drops a QRS complex and starts all over again. When identifying AV blocks, we are focusing on the P wave, we're focusing on that PR segment itself and the PR interval in total. So the beginning of the P wave to the beginning of the QRS complex is what we are focused on here. So take a moment and look at this 12 lead. And when we're talking AV blocks, so what do you see? We're going to look at that PR interval. And that PR interval If we measure it out, it's a little bit long. It's going to be greater than 0.20 seconds, but okay, so we got something going on. Is it consistent? So is it the same for every beat? And then is there a P wave for every single QRS complex? So yes, it is consistent with every beat. And yes, we have a P wave, one P wave, for each one QRS complex. So here we have, which is a normal sinus rhythm, with a first degree AV block, because all we have is just a lengthened PR interval. For this one now, again, we're focusing on those PR intervals. What do those PR intervals look like? Well, let's focus down on this running lead 2 down at the bottom. Because I mean, we can go left to right up here, but everything's kind of changing in deflection, and we're changing leads. So let's focus on our running lead down here at the bottom. And I've got this PR interval, looks a little long. And I've got this PR interval, it's long, but it's different than this first one. It's even longer. And then I've got this one where the P wave is actually starting to get buried in the T wave, so it's long, but it's even longer than the second one. So where you've got this progressively lengthening PR interval, and then I've got this P wave, but I have a P wave buried in here, buried in the T wave. Here again is where your calipers that you already bought, totally have them in your hands right now. Here's where your calipers come in handy, because your P waves are still going to march out. So if you take your calipers, measure your P to P, you can just start flipping them over and they're going to march out pretty easily. So it's easier to find these buried P waves. So your P wave buried in this T wave, but with this P wave, there's no QRS complex associated with it. It's a skipped beat, and we start all over again. Lengthened PR interval, and then lengthens a little bit more, buried in here, totally buried in here, and we skip a beat again, right? So here we have a second degree type 1 AV block. Well, what about this one? So we've got some QRSs, we got some P waves, but we got some funky stuff going on, right? So let's focus down on our lead to our running lead 2, and let's look at our PR intervals. Well, that's a little short. That's super long. There's a P wave in there for some reason. It's a P wave that's super long, but not the same as either of those. That looks a little long. Borderline normal, that looks a little long. There's another one right in there. Notice that all of these P waves march out. These P waves are fairly regular. There's a buried P wave in there if you're wondering. And our QRSs are regular, they march out. But our P waves and our QRSs are completely dissociated. They're not talking to each other whatsoever. Our atria are doing their thing, our ventricles are doing their thing. So we're seeing P waves all over the place, but our atria are firing regularly. Our ventricles are doing their own thing, but they're firing regularly. They're just not talking to each other. So there is a significant block between the atria, a complete block between the atria and the ventricles. So here we have a third degree AV block.